From the North Beach Podcast Company in partnership with TSN, welcome to February and episode 8 of season 2 of the Ray and Darren Hockey Podcast. Big Ray and Greg shout out to all the healthcare and frontline workers as we come up to a full year, Ray, of the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, I know it's the same for you. You know, it's kind of Groundhog Day, day in and day out, but yet March of 2020 doesn't seem that long ago. And yet, you know, we've managed in our personal lives, our family lives, to get through it professionally. Clearly has had an impact, but imagine the stress and everything that all of our care workers and our frontline workers have gone through over the past 10 plus months.
Well, it's the stress of not knowing, the relentlessness of COVID. It just, I mean, really, even though the vaccine's out there on the horizon, and you know, on my good days, I tell myself that, hey, you know, good things are around the corner. It just seems like forever that's going to be. And if you're the healthcare workers, the frontline workers, they're in it every day. I mean, they're in it, you know, there's no respite. They go home, they've got to be careful. They've got to watch what they do. They turn around, they go back to work, and it's everywhere for them. And it's really quite remarkable that just in their job, they have to deal with all of this physically, yes, but mentally too.
Yeah. And thanks again to all the care providers, because clearly we're far from being out of wave 2 of COVID-19 with all that's going on. This might be a first as we dig into episode 8 of the Ray and Greg's podcast. We've got a husband-wife tandem coming up on the podcast, and that's Chris and Kelsie Snow. Chris, of course, is the assistant general manager of the Calgary Flames. So I'm looking forward to hearing his perspective of not just the Flames, but the North Division in general, all 7 Canadian teams. Kelsie, I mean, what a wonderful human being she must be. I mean, we don't know her outside of the connection that we have on social media. But, you know, again, Chris was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, in June of 2019. Not a good prognosis, but, you know, he continues to defy the odds. And Kelsie just provides, it seems, that emotional lift, that spirit, you know, that Chris clearly thrives on. They're parents of 2 wonderful children. So I'm looking forward to that conversation ahead as well. It's not going to be easy, but I think we can have some fun because, as you know, Ray, Kelsie is gifted. She's a journalist. She's a great writer, and she's got a wonderful sense of humor on social media.
Well, Chris is really kind of a pioneer in the way analytics were viewed in the National Hockey League. He was a sports writer at one time, and then Chris was hired and all of a sudden became known as this kind of whiz kid. Yet his way of presenting the analytics, because it was so new to people so they could understand, was really quite a big part of his gift to what his job was. Mm-hmm. You know, the diagnosis, of course, is super tough to hear about. And it's not that if you're not aware of Kelsie's writings, I encourage you to take a few minutes, because it's not just all positivity and all, it's real life stuff. It's about being a mom and a wife and a caregiver and trying to do everything for everybody, yet trying to keep yourself in all of this. And she's really remarkable in the way she presents it. I find her quite inspirational. I find Chris an incredible inspiration as he continues to be a dad, to battle this disease, to work and contribute to the Calgary Flames. And we will enjoy talking to them in a few moments.
For sure. Be a well-rounded conversation, like we said, through hockey, through what might be a typical day, and there probably isn't one in the Snow household. So Chris and Kelsie Snow joining us on the podcast shortly. Great reaction on our social media channels to my reenactment of the video, taking us back to 2011, prior to Game 7, when you, my friend, Ray Ferraro, in haste, trying to get to the set, walked smack into a plate glass window and split your nose. And I'll tell you, Nicole Anderson does so many things for us at TSN. I don't know where she found the video, because it was one of my deepest regrets. I mean, we're going back a decade almost here. How I didn't, put that video in a safety deposit box somewhere. I don't know. But I sent it to a bunch of people at TSN as soon as I did it, thinking, all right, everybody will get a chuckle. Let's move on. I deleted it clearly, and somehow Nicole found this video.
Well,
it's awesome.
Okay, so first of all, when I hit, like you got to, like I hadn't even slowed down, right? Like because that's an open door, except it's not. It's a glass wall, and so when my face smashes into it, I had been cut with a stick or something or other previously, so the cut was like an impact cut. It just reopened up that cut. But now we got to get on for Sports Center. So I think it was Nicole. It might have been somebody else says, hey, maybe we could just put a little, like a butterfly stitch over it. I got 5 stitches. I mean, it was an open wound. There was no butterfly stitch going to save that thing.
Nah.
And so we go to the hospital, into the emergency room. There's, of course, it's a beautiful afternoon. There's nobody around. I walk in, the doctor's like, kind of looks at me like, you're in a suit, you're cut in the face, like what's going on? So he stitches up. We talk about game 7 as he's stitching me up, and we go back to the rink. Yeah, that one hurt.
Okay. So, and we've all done this, not that, but we've all made a mistake that led to an injury where you went, I can't believe I just did that. So dumb. Like, you're slicing vegetables and you zip your finger open. You're like, a split second before cutting your finger, you're like, I'm going to cut my finger if I'm not more careful. You cut your finger. Right. So your response, I'll never forget it. You walked into that wall with authority because clearly you didn't see it. So it was like, boom. And I was standing right there, and you were like, what did I just do? And then you went, I just split my nose wide open. That's what I did. I'm such an idiot. Like, you went from shock and awe to I'm such a donkey in like about a 3-second span.
Well, but just think of like how dumb it was to do. We're sitting around there. We're there an hour and a half early. Why am I in a rush to get on the set? It's not like they said, hey, we're on in 30 seconds. They're like, hey, Ray, you got 5 minutes. And I must have been gabbing away and doing whatever. Oh, now I'm in a hurry. Bam. That was a stunner, I'll tell you.
Anyway, if you haven't seen it, go to the Ray and Darren.
Yeah, please do.
You have to have a look at it. It's vintage footage from 2011 prior to Game 7. Ray, headlines this week are brought to us by our friends at Ligaro.com Jewelers. Valentine's Day, right around the corner, so get to Ligaro.com for something that he are going to love. Do Valentine's Day right. Remember to use code RAY10 at checkout for 10% off select regularly priced items. So again, use code RAY10 at checkout for that 10% discount. I thought we'd start headlines in episode 8, accentuating the positive. I guess I'm going to accentuate the positive somewhat at the expense of the Ottawa Senators, but we see Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl combined have an 11-point game against the Ottawa Senators on Sunday. But then you go back to Saturday. How many games were there Saturday? Like 13?
13, I think, yeah.
3 overtimes in that 13-game span, and you've got Connor McDavid, Alex Ovechkin, and Sidney Crosby scoring the overtime winners. Like, from a coaching perspective and analyst perspective, you're probably watching those games and going, not the overtime games, because those were exciting, but you're watching McDavid and Draisaitl fill their boots against the Ottawa Senators. And from a coaching standpoint, you're probably like, oh my God, like this is terrible. From a fan standpoint, and maybe from an analyst perspective, from the overtime games to the 8-5 Oilers win on Sunday night, I mean, isn't that entertainment? Isn't that what we need more of?
Yes, it is. And, we're not going to get a bunch of 8-5 games, but the common thread through it is the greatest players in the game were all involved in it. Yeah. And as much as we know how important depth is to winning a Stanley Cup or, having a good third pair and a good penalty kill, it's the stars that draw the attention. It's the stars that draw excitement and make excitement. Those 3 overtime goals, Crosby, I'm trying to think of the order. I think it was Crosby, Ovechkin, McDavid.
Yeah, I think
those were in 12 minutes. Like in 12 minutes, boom, 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 3 number 1 overall picks score. And then on Sunday night, the Senators come in losing 16-3 aggregate in Vancouver in 3 games. They come into Edmonton. Edmonton's like, man, we just won in overtime. We cannot give these points away. We need them. And they're thinking, hey, we got a team that's on their heels here. I've never seen a goal 8 seconds into a game off an offensive zone faceoff.
Crazy.
Now, if you need any indication of how much Matt Murray is struggling, there's zero chance he should be freezing that puck. Right. There's no reason. The puck came off the boards. Come out of your crease and play it to the corner. But clearly he's got zero confidence. He can't stop a beach ball right now. The Senators have signed him to a 4-year, $25 million contract, which doesn't look real good at this point. But what I thought was really interesting was, so McDavid gets his 5th point, a minute into the second period when he dances through on the power play. I don't think anybody at that point had realized Draisaitl had 5 assists. I don't think, and the reason I don't think so is I tweeted out later on, and I hadn't seen anything before it. It doesn't mean it wasn't there, but I hadn't seen anything saying it's awesome watching Connor McDavid with his goal and 4 assists, but Leon Draisaitl's 1 assist away from the all-time assist record because he had 6 and the record was 7. Of course, Gretz did it 3 times, right? It's 7 assists 3 times, but it's amazing that he had all those points early and then couldn't get the 7th one. Right? You'd think somewhere in there you'd get another one. But, man, Ottawa's reeling. The Oilers' power play, which started 1 for 18. I think they're like, God, I want to say they're like, 10 for their last, 14 or 15. There. Man, so they're up to 29% again. It's impressive to watch.
All right. So, again, we've accentuated the positive in kickstarting headlines. I don't know if it's a negative. It's a reality. And, we did the Leafs Oilers game on Thursday, and I mean, there was a barrage of penalties in that game, the ticky-tacky stuff, and a lot of them are penalties. The Toronto Maple Leafs had, I think, 7 minor penalties in that game, and they fall in overtime. Alex Kerfoot had 3 minor penalties, and the one that stands out to me was a slash, where I could tell you were exasperated at that point because, the stick was close to whoever the penalty was on his hands, but it wasn't on the hands. It was on the stick. And I remember you saying, and you pick it up from here, but you said, look, if that's a slash, then the stuff that we see in front of the net, Austin Matthews early in the year when he got cross-checked, they've got to buckle down. They've got to really, focus on that because the players are confused and probably to this point of the regular season frustrated as well.
Well, I watch Montreal play, and, I love watching Brendan Gallagher. He just gets hammered in front of the net. And I understand that the front of the net is a tough place. I love when the fans tweet at me and say, hey, it's a tough place. You've got to put up with punishment. I know, I used to go there.
Yeah.
I've been there, and it's not a fun place. However, if you're calling the little slash on the hands because it's in the rule book, you can't only call 1/3 of the rule book. Well, I guess you can because they do. You either call the rule book or don't call the rule book. It's one or the other. And for those that say, oh, let the players decide, we don't want too many penalties, well, then throw the rule book out and call whatever the hell you want. That's a ridiculous old school thought. And the reason it's ridiculous is when you say don't let the players decide by calling too many penalties, then you're letting the players decide.
Right.
Because I'll tell you, I used to play against Peter Stastny, and he was impossible to play against because he was so good and so big and strong. Mm-hmm. So I'd be in the defensive zone, and somewhere it occurred to me that if he had 3 hands on his stick, it probably wouldn't work very well. So he'd have I'd grab his stick. I'd be right behind him, and I'd grab his stick. And the ref would yell, let it go. So I'd let it go. We'd go 2 more strides, and I'd grab it again. I never got called for holding because it was the only way I could stop him. How was that not a penalty? I committed 3 penalties a shift, but there were no penalties. We weren't letting the players decide, weren't we? We were, because they were letting me decide to commit a penalty every time. It was the only way I could stop him. So I think that's wrong. I don't want to see 8-5 games all the time, but I want to see Connor McDavid skate. I want to see Leon Draisaitl make a pass. I want to see Austin Matthews be free enough that he's not arm wrestling guys to take that shot. I want to see all of that stuff. I want to see Patrick Kane dance through the neutral zone. Man, I love that stuff. And I think that's the sport. That is hockey. However, they've gotten into this thing now. It's like their focus is gone on just calling the game fairly and evenly, because it's not even, because they're calling those stick fouls and they're not calling some of the more egregious cross checks, if you will, in front of the net. And there was a couple of suspensions this week. Like, it's not an easy game to referee and officiate. I understand that, but there's got to be some focus on what the hell are we trying to do here?
Right. So if we segue over to the non-suspensions, we should invite George Parros, the head of the Department of Player Safety, onto the podcast, just to give him the forum to take us through his process and how difficult. We don't have to go case by case. I know you have a thought on the Dylan Dubé non-suspension on Kotkaniemi, and Fiala hits Matt Roy from behind. I mean, that was just flat out ugly. I don't defend George Parros or the Department of Player Safety. That's not my job. But I do think it's important, because the fan will look at those two incidents and go, what the hell? How is there no penalty? And, if we zero in on Dubé, on Kotkaniemi, the sense is that the Department of Player Safety believes that the head was unavoidable. It was just accidental contact that led to the hit on Kotkaniemi. I mean, we'll get George on at some point to explain all of that. But when you're watching that, I mean, we have the same ability that the Department of Player Safety does, right? From a techno perspective, we can look at it 50 different ways as well, and we do. In either case, it sure felt like there needed to be some form of supplemental discipline. Agree?
Drakes, I have this filter that I use immediately when a play happens. I say, in my head, I say suspension or not.
Right.
Like, because those plays are pretty obvious, the ones that are going to get looked at again. Like, right? They just look, oh boy, they make you kind of sit up. And so my first thought was, that has to be because Dylan Dubé is about 3 to 4 inches shorter than Jesperi Kotkaniemi. I know Kotkaniemi's bent over, but he hits him in the head. It is unavoidable. I don't know how it can't be unavoidable. And I'm not saying that Dubé targeted his head, which, by the way, is a really important part of the suspension process, whether the head is targeted or not. To me, and I think this is an important distinction, it shouldn't matter. In the game, it shouldn't matter whether it was targeted or not. If it's hit, there's going to be some kind of supplemental discipline to it. That's in my world, which clearly is not the NHL's.
I hear you, and I support that thinking. And I mentioned this on radio, I think in Montreal this morning. We're recording on Monday morning. Everybody goes after the Department of Player Safety, but you know where the marching orders come from, right? They come from the general managers, right? So the same general managers that piss and moan when their player gets hurt, right? Those are the guys that are in that room, and a lot of them played in the NHL. Marc Bergevin played how many years in the National Hockey League? How many games? And I'm not saying that he would defend the decision not to apply supplemental discipline here, but that's what happens. Colin Campbell does a masterful job of putting together this collection of hits, and then the managers look at them when it's healthy enough in a different world, in the same room in Boca, Florida, and they go, "Well, we don't want to take hitting out of the game." Okay, nobody's saying you have to take hitting out of the game. You just don't have to hit somebody in the head. So if you do accidentally or otherwise, to your point, you're going to face discipline, right?
I don't ever get this take hitting out of the game. Like, I don't get it because it's not going to happen. How many hits are we really talking about? Are we talking about one every 3 or 4 or 5 games, Drakes?
Maybe.
Yeah. So all those other hits get to stay.
Yeah.
But that one doesn't.
Take it out.
And I don't understand why it's such a problem. One of the issues is that, you mentioned the GMs start to complain when their guy gets hit. It's also the fans that, I'm guaranteeing you, I didn't go through and read, but the Calgary fans thought that hit was fine. The Montreal fans were not very happy. If Kotkaniemi makes that hit, same hit on Dubé, it's completely flipped.
Right.
So for me, it's relatively easy to look at that hit with a total impartiality. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other who's wearing which jersey. I think if you make hit to the head, of course, if it's targeted, that's one thing. But I think there should be, maybe you make it a 2 and a 10. Like maybe that becomes the supplemental discipline. So nobody's suspended, but you lose 10 minutes of the game. Maybe that's the case. To me, that would be fine. Because don't forget, it's 10 days ago, Tyler Myers hit Yoel Armia. I don't think Armia's skating yet. Right? So that wasn't
he's still in concussion protocol.
He's still in protocol. There's real consequence for the guys that get hit. And you can say, yeah, it's part of the game, suck it up, but that's the old way. That's not the way anymore.
Agreed. All right, 2 more things I want to get to in headlines. I maybe when I open my mouth on insider trading, people tune out. I mean, that's possible. That could be happening. I was surprised.
Are you on insider trading?
I put that up on a tee for you, my friend. Thursday on insider trading. Now, this was post Jimmy Rutherford's surprise announcement that he had resigned as general manager of the Penguins.
Quick aside, how surprised were you?
I was shocked because I had literally just talked to him and we were texting each other Wednesday morning back and forth. And I mean, look, the man's been around the game forever. I don't expect that he should just say, oh, by the way, get ready because I'm retiring in an hour. But I was shocked. And I mean, maybe one day the story will come out on that. But it does lend itself to what I'm about to throw at you. So we know the window is closing on the Pittsburgh Penguins, and maybe we can debate on how quickly it's closing or not. And new management might decide that in concert with Mario and Ron Burkle, the ownership of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And on Thursday, I reported that it's expected there will be a discussion this summer between Pat Brisson, the agent for Sidney Crosby. I mean, CAA Sports represents Evgeny Malkin as well, with Penguins management, probably ownership as well, to determine the future of Crosby, Malkin with the organization. I mean, if it's deemed that a renovation is required.
Whoa. Hang on. Renovation? A renovation is you change the blinds.
Okay.
If this conversation that you're going to get into is taking place or not taking place, it's a rebuild. You cannot renovate without a starting goalie, missing 3 defensemen and a couple of forwards. Right. That's not a renovation.
So, but are they at that point where you should be? I mean, Crosby's, this is 16th season, right? Like, and I mean, he's such an influential, impactful player.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But this summer, if you're the new GM of the Pittsburgh Penguins, are you going to sit and say, look, man, you can see what we've got coming here. And we've got a lot of work to do. Foundationally, we've got a lot of work to do. It's going to take between 3 and 5 years. We'd love for you to retire a Penguin, all-timer. You're going straight to the Hall of Fame, all of that. But out of respect to you and your will to compete as hard and more than most in the National Hockey League, we're willing to give you that opportunity. And the return for Crosby, as example, would be what? Off the charts. So where are you, Ray Ferraro, as the next general manager of the Penguins? Are you having that conversation or is it too early for that?
There's not one conversation I'm not having because I don't want it even rattling around in Sid's head.
Right.
If it doesn't need to. He might say, unless you have the conversation, he might say to himself, man, look at this. I got a whole bunch of young guys around me again. We traded this guy. We traded that guy. We got more draft picks. They're not going to help me because the draft picks are just kids. So what am I doing? I don't want that in his head because like the one thing that I think separates Sid from so many other superstars, he's been called the greatest grinder of all time. And I just admire his work ethic and his ability to just plow forward all the time. It's like, it's pretty incredible, actually. Mm-hmm. I don't want anybody to notice even this much slip because then everybody goes, oh man, maybe Sid's thinking of leaving. I want to have that conversation. He might tell me, hey, I'm staying in Pittsburgh. And you go, yes, you are. And he might say, you know what, if there's a deal out there to these 3 teams, whoever they might be, I'd be into that. But I would, out of respect for him, I would have that conversation. Out of what he's done for the Pittsburgh Penguins, I would have that conversation.
Agreed.
But I'm not doing my job if I'm the GM, if I just pretend it's not there. I mean, how big is the rug you're going to sweep stuff under? You can't.
Well, and again, I was a bit surprised, and maybe people, media included, just don't think that conversation is going to happen. I don't know.
Are they going to watch the Super Bowl this week?
I assume so.
Well, yeah, Tom Brady's playing. Doesn't he play? Oh, he doesn't play for the Patriots anymore. It's a different time. It's a different time. And maybe before, everybody just went along and said, yeah, I'll finish my career here, and that's the way it is. But that's not the case anymore.
Not. All right. Got to move here, but quick thought on Sam Bennett of the Calgary Flames, Victor Mete, both represented by Darren Ferris, who had his hands full this weekend. Now, I learned about this early in the week, specific to Sam Bennett. And Mete has been out there just because he never plays. He doesn't get in the lineup for the Montreal Canadiens. The younger player, and we've talked about this on the pod before, has some swagger, don't they? Where they just, look, I'm not happy here. I'm not playing. Or in Bennett's case, I don't like the role. I don't like the opportunity that I don't have in Calgary. Time to move on. But I also respect the manager's positions too, right? Like Berge and Tree are both sitting there going, well, great, you can ask for a trade. Doesn't mean I have to trade you. We're playing by my rules here. I mean, that's a position that you have to observe.
Well, until you get to be an unrestricted free agent, you can do whatever you want, yell and scream and jump up and down and ask for a trade 26 times. And doesn't mean it's going to happen. The key parts here for me is that I think Bennett can be a successful player. If I were a team, I'd want to define, is he a winger or a centerman? Because he does both in Calgary, and he kind of looks like he's got a foot in both positions. That never works. Mete, was quite a surprise coming out of London, made the Canadiens, and all of a sudden he's playing on their top pair. He's not a top pair guy, but he's an NHL guy for sure. However, he's stuck. So this is where the agent is super important, because a lot of times we'll see in the media, is this an agent-driven agenda or the player? It's not an agent-driven deal. I must have asked my agent, Steve Bartlett, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 times, like, I got to get out of here. I'm not playing this. And he'd go, oh, yeah, give me a call back tomorrow. Because he knew I needed to settle down. And we'd have a discussion. And sometimes now that I think back of it, I don't even know if Steve went and talked to the general manager. Or he said, no. And he probably said, yeah, I gave him a call, and he said, just wait things out. I'm sure now that I think of it, of course he did that. So he's protecting me against my emotions. Now, if this is built up enough, like it has for Bennett and Mete in their head, it doesn't matter that they're young. There is no statute of limitations. If this is your career, you got one crack at it. We were too stupid when I played to even have an opinion. We just sat there, and if they put a day-old biscuit, that's what you got, right? You just kind of just sat there. Now, the guys today are like, not good enough. I want my career to be different. And Mark Bergevin and Brad Treliving don't have to do anything. They can look around and go, oh, you want to give me a 5th round pick? Yeah, not interested. Sorry, Sam, couldn't do it. Sorry, Victor, couldn't happen. And so, but it'll be interesting because they're young, and there will be an interest for sure for both teams.
All right. Those are your headlines, brought to you by our friends, Ligaro.com Jewelers. Our interview today with Chris and Kelsie Snow is presented by our friends at coolbet.co. Chris from Coolbet will join us a bit later with all the latest odds and props for Super Bowl 55. You must be 19, and Coolbet reminds you, stay cool, always bet responsibly. All right, exciting segment on the Ray and Darren podcast, Ray. We've got Chris and Kelsie Snow. Chris, of course, Assistant General Manager of the Calgary Flames. Kelsie, in our tee-up earlier, we talked about talented writer, great sense of humor on Twitter, very inspirational as well, huge hockey fan. Both of you guys parents, and incredibly busy, as we just talked about here in a preamble. Kelsie, I'll start with you. Take us through a typical day in the Snow household in a pandemic, which isn't easy for any of us, but In your case, in Chris's case, it gets more complicated.
Yeah, so it's changed a lot since Chris got his feeding tube. The mornings are a bit more scheduled and a bit more hectic. So a morning looks like me getting up, Chris getting up, he makes coffee, I get his breakfast ready. I feed him generally breakfast through a syringe. And so I give him like half of his food. He has some coffee. I make the kids breakfast. I make the kids lunch for school. Then I give him the other half of his food. Then he takes a shower and I have to kind of dress his tube and tape it up and everything. And then I tie his shoes and he goes off to work. And then the house is usually quiet for a while for me. Well, now that the season is going, Chris is going to work most days. Now, when the team's not away or not at home, then he's staying home, but he has to go in every day to get COVID tested. So he's like our canary in the coal mine, I would say.
So Chris, you got to go to the rink every day to get tested?
Yeah, every single morning, all of us, the players, the coaches, any staff in the office that has direct contact with those individuals.
So do you get, do they do the nose test or the throat test?
You know what, they go back and forth. It's nose, then throat, and you kind of figure out the 3 stations, the one you don't want to go into. And thankfully, I've had fairly good luck. I had one rough one the other day, but honestly, it's really reassuring to know daily that I'm good.
When we were at the World Junior tournament, we were getting tested every day. And that second day where they were doing the throat swab, you know, no good. You'd be like, and it was odd days, even days. And so the 31st of December and the 1st of January were back-to-back throat days. And it was like, man, that's not good.
You preferred the nose?
Oh yeah. For you?
A rough one. She had a rough one on the drive-through.
I had the nose one that goes all the way back. No. No
good. Yeah,
I didn't enjoy it.
Your brain.
I don't recommend.
Now, Chris, we were talking at the start of the show, since you were diagnosed with ALS and all the changes that have gone on in your life and challenges for both you and of course and Kelsie and all of Kelsie's writings. I don't know that people realize what a pioneer you are in your field. You were a sports writer that came to management and nobody knew anything about analytics. We didn't, like us old guys, we had no idea. Yet you found a way to make it understandable. And what was it early on that you could relate to people that didn't understand about the way analytics could impact hockey?
Well, I think there was a perfect storm of, at that time, there was very little data available. So what was there was rather simplistic. And I was really fortunate to really get an education in the game from Doug Reisrout and Jacques Lemaire on a daily basis. And so as the data became more complicated, I always related it back to the language that I had learned the game from Doug and from Jacques. And then the second year and half of the third year I was here, Bob Hartley and Craig Potter and I kind of as add-ons to the coaching staff. And so for a year and a half, I kind of got that education of what is the team meeting like? How do the coaches talk to players? How do the coaches talk to each other? And so really, everything I deliver downstairs is requiring me to adapt to them, not them to adapt to me. And I think that's the only way you can be successful with this.
Does it make you feel good to read about and to know about Lee Stempniak, one of your players in Calgary, now is a data analyst in Arizona? And he mentioned that when he was playing, you took all of his shots from one year, and he had no idea that they were all coming from the same place, and he scored from the same place all the time to realize I've got to vary my game a bit. And that, to him, that made sense that analytically there was something to learn. Now he's going to liaison between the analytics department and the players. Like, is that something you could see coming? And does that make you feel pretty good that you've influenced someone like Lee?
Yeah. Lee was a really inquisitive guy, and he was ahead of his time in the sense of asking these questions, and went to Dartmouth, had an economics degree, so he was wired that way. And he sought me out. This was 6, 7, 8 years ago, and because Lee would tend to score in bunches and then not score for a long time. And so, we talked about it, and he was scoring tight to the net, certainly inside the dots, and we kind of stopped the tendency to wander outside and shoot to stuff at the net if the puck was below the goal line. And I recall right after we talked, he scored a goal and he stopped at the goal line. He said, I scored that because I was thinking about what we talked about. And that felt really good. That felt like a true application from office to ice. And I think teams, the more there's data that's complicated, the tracking data, the sort logic type data, the Flamers do not grow up with this. And they need a voice that sounds like theirs, a face that looks like theirs. And Lee is that now for the Coyotes. And I think I've seen a lot of those individuals in Major League Baseball, the NBA, going on a decade. And I think our league will need that, and you'll see that as this data, continues to evolve into just something that is enormous, but needs real simplification and application.
Kelsie, you guys have been married a long time, and when I hear Chris,
she says that often. Just twice as long.
I think all our wives say that, Chris. I think we always have a number that's lower than theirs. How long you been married? 47 years, my wife says.
13. 13 feels like 30.
So you've seen Chris as you guys have grown together, but what struck me there was that he said he had to change. He had to figure out the language to talk to the players, not the other way around. Is that always been there? Like the curiosity,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would say that Chris is the most adaptable person that I've ever known. And he's also the best at taking constructive criticism, which that's a hard thing for us all to do, to hear like, this isn't working, you need to do something else. And he came from journalism, which is an incredibly individualistic lifestyle, profession. Like, it's all about your byline. And when someone edits your story in a way you don't like, you can get upset because you're so protective of it. And he had to completely tear that down when he was in Minnesota and totally rethink the way that he approached things, which was as a team and not as an individual. And he's embraced that in a very big way. And I do think that one of the, the benefits for him having been a journalist and now doing analytics is that he understands the way a locker room works. He was in locker rooms as a journalist. And so he knows what's going to work and what's not going to work. And I think a lot of times in analytics, people who are doing the analytics, they give you the data and they give these guys the data and they're kind of like, well, why aren't they using all of it? Like, why don't they understand how valuable this is? But Chris has this understanding that like maybe 20% of what you're going to give them is going to like actually kind of, they have the time and they really have the desire to like let it sink in. And so because he has that different expectation, it just works better for him. And he knows how to approach it in a different way. And he just knows it's going to, for a lot of it, it's going to take time. I was likening it the other day to, when they like banned chewing tobacco in the minor leagues in baseball, and now like nobody chews tobacco anymore. Well, like as these guys come up and they start to do these things in junior hockey and they start to do these things in, the minor leagues and everything in hockey, they'll start to be more normal. The kids who are getting drafted now will grow up with these things a part of the game. But for the guys who haven't, it's just a different situation. And I think that he understands that really well, which I think speaks to his longevity in the league, his ability to adapt and his ability to understand what people are going to take from what he's giving them.
So hockey is Chris's outlet, obviously. It's his profession, but also for, it provides purpose. It's a distraction. It's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Writing would be the same, I assume, for you, Kelsie, but what's different is you're writing about your everyday life. How therapeutic is that for you to be able to have that outlet, be it through your blog, social media, a podcast? I mean, just being able to express yourself in that manner.
Yeah, I mean, it's been huge for me. It helps me I find that I tend to write when I'm feeling my saddest. Sorry, world. And then like by the end of the blog post, I've sort of like, or by the end of my writing, whatever kind of thing I'm doing that day, I've sort of found my way back around to my like hope and my positivity and like, okay, this is how I feel and this sucks and this is hard and this is why it was hard today. But there's always a reason to remember at the end of the day to be grateful or positive or that there's hope. Chris has been the one who's taught me that. I always joke that I'm a recovering pessimist, and that's how, he's an optimist and he's positive. And so something bad will happen and I'll feel pretty down about it. And then he'll say something about the sunset. Oh, how so beautiful. And I'm like, how can you, this day sucked. Why are you so positive? So he's definitely the person who brings that to my life. And for me, writing definitely helps me sort through some emotions. And, as kind of unexpected aside, I found that other people tend to find some commonality in what I'm saying. And, the idea that maybe writing about my experience could be helping other people is very humbling for me. And, I'm happy to do it. I wish I didn't have to be writing about these things, but it's beneficial to me. And if there's anything I can do as far as advocacy in ALS, I realize this is my kind of niche for that. And I'm just trying to kind of go with it.
Now, you read this past in one of your last writings, you're going to start a podcast, and
yes.
you should.
Oh, thank you.
Now, we find in our house your writings to be quite inspirational, and
thanks, Ray.
We all think we have issues and stuff in the day. And I read this one thing that everybody's got a bag of rocks they carry around, and some of these are bigger rocks than others. How do you guys, the two of you, a couple, find a way to compartmentalize the hard stuff as opposed to, hey, we got these two great kids, but we have our relationship too. Like there's lots of stuff just in those three little things.
Well, I think that the kids honestly really spur that along. They don't let you kind of wallow. They don't let you kind of sit in your sadness. They've had sad moments. Our son especially had a really hard time in the lead up to Chris's feeding tube, but they, they're just kids, and they tend to just kind of take things as they are. And you see all the positivity and the joy from them. I think COVID has been hard for so many reasons. And, one of the reasons is certainly I can't hire a babysitter. But when we were going to Toronto, actually for the clinical trial that Chris was in, we went to Toronto from July until I guess March of this year, before they started offering it in Calgary. And those monthly trips ended up being a really important time for our marriage, a really good chance to reconnect. So I always say when COVID's over, I'm going on a vacation with just Chris. I don't know where I'm going to dump my kids, but I'm going to
somewhere.
So there are definitely challenges. And I think that one of the things that's important to remember is that yes, we have these big things and I write about these big things, but our life is just still full of all these everyday things, these tiny little arguments about somebody didn't take out the trash or whatever. We still are just a regular married couple. In addition to this, it does add this extra weight to these arguments, and that can be hard. That can be the hardest part of it. It's we don't want to fight about anything small because you don't want to feel like you're wasting any time or losing any time and that kind of a thing. But in general, I think we're doing the best we can with what we have. And a lot of times sometimes we feel like we're doing a really good job, and sometimes we feel like we have no idea what we're doing. But the important thing is to just every day keep, trying to go forward with what you have and be present and appreciate that.
Chris, do you find it helpful, or were you nervous that Kelsie was going to write and it was going to become more public? I mean, everybody in the hockey world, we had heard about your diagnosis, and lots of us hadn't met you and lots had, and then it's going to become more publicly known thing. How were you with that?
I was really good with it. I think that when I lost my dad, two uncles and a cousin, I did nothing in the way of advocacy or fundraising. And I felt like I had a platform in the league, in this country, in the US, that I couldn't pass that up. And I think Kelsie and I said to each other, you either kind of step out in a way, or you lean in. And if you lean in, why not lean in hard? And her ability to articulate this and to really get a step ahead of having to explain any changes or things I would want, in as much as how people treat me, she can do that. So I found it has served countless purposes in the way of advocacy, fundraising, communication to friends, family, strangers. As she's gone on, her writing, her following has only gotten better and larger, and I would have it no other way.
I mean, you've touched on it there, Chris, and maybe we'll leave it at this. As I mentioned, I mean, you continue clearly to defy the odds and bring hope to all who are battling ALS. But is it just to simplify a combination of things? Kelsie mentioned the clinical trial that you went through, the therapies that are ongoing, but above all that, the support of friends and family that are so dear to you, that you ball all that up. Does that help explain, even in a small way, that, as I said, you continue to do well and defy the odds?
Well, I feel great gratitude. And they told me I had 1 year to live, and I am, I don't know, 19, 20 months out. And I skated at the outdoor rink for 3 hours 2 days ago. I can shoot a puck off a crossbar. I think we all want to be happy, and the choices are gratitude and happiness, or like Kelsie said, you wallow. And I have no interest in wallowing, and I think that would be enormously inconsiderate to what happened to my family members before me. I have a gift here, whether I have it for a year or 2 or 10 or 40 or I don't know, but I feel really on a day-to-day basis immense gratitude that I can get in the car, start it up, drive to work, and do my job with limitations. I struggled to, articulate loud and clear like I used to. But honestly, aside from that, I am the same exact person. And so I would say that I am more normal than not, and that is remarkable, and that keeps me going and keeps me really engaged and happy every day.
Well, we really appreciate you guys taking the time, and above all that, allowing us into your world through Kelsie, of course, social media and the blog and whatnot. But, Ray used the word inspirational, and how his family, Cammie and the kids, have been inspired. And I think Ray speaks for not only Canadians, but so many people, hockey fans, et cetera, around the world. So keep doing what you do, Kelsie, and Chris, you just keep on battling, brother. We really appreciate you guys taking the time.
Thanks, guys.
And I appreciate you guys sharing our story. It's meant the world to us. And as much as you guys say that this is inspirational, the support inspires me every day to continue to.
Well, all the best, you guys. We'll be in touch. We'll be following Kelsie and your writings, and Chris will be following your Flames. And got a pretty good goalie there you guys came up with, eh? He's not so bad.
It's so good to see his pants brush against the crossbar and fill that net. He has been terrific.
He is a giant in there.
All right, guys, be well.
Thanks, Ray.
All right, take care.
All the best. Thank you, guys.
You too.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
You and I, Ray, we get paid to talk. You get paid to analyze hockey, have a strong opinion on our various platforms at TSN. Likewise for me. I mean, the hair is getting grayer and all of those things. So we're not without our issues. But man, that was a rewarding interview. To listen to Kelsie, how positive she is, but also how honest she is, and talking about just frankly how difficult day-to-day life is inside the Snow House, was sobering to be sure, but she's got that kind of bubbly, spin to it where it puts a smile on your face. You're listening to what she's saying, and it's hard to smile when you're trying to comprehend what her world is or what Chris is going through. But the two of them together are bringing us into their homes in such an honest manner and sharing their deepest, toughest moments, but they're doing it with class, and they're doing it with humor, and they're doing it with a level of honesty that, again, you used the word inspirational, which I stole towards the end of the interview, but how can you not be inspired when listening to Kelsie and Chris Snow?
Well, it's so easy to see through how she speaks and how she writes, and through Chris's career, why they would have met, like why they would have connected, why they would have had a dynamic quality to them. And then to see the struggles and listen to the struggles through ALS that Chris is going through. And then you juxtapose it with his career, how he was in part kind of an innovator of bringing the analytics to the player and making them understand it. Yeah. And then Kelsie being able to talk about their life and about their kids. And she said something in the interview, Dregs, it made me kind of stop a bit. She's like, all those little day-to-day little, hey, somebody didn't take the garbage out. And you don't want to spend too much time with that because you're wasting time. Yeah. And I was like, man, how many times do you at home, I think we're probably all the same. Hey, I thought you were going to unload the dishwasher, or I thought you were taking the garbage out, whatever. And you're like, they don't want to do that because that's wasted time. Like that's a lesson we can take. It's wasted time. Just empty the dishwasher. Yeah. Like just do it. Yeah. And Kelsie's writings have really inspired me. I use that term, Dregs, that you carry around a bag of rocks. I think we We all have things that we have that nobody really knows about. Yet what they carry around and how they conduct themselves is truly inspirational.
Really is. And it makes it difficult for me to jump into the next segment, throat punch, because that's a tough segue no matter how you slice and dice it. But how about a collective throat punch to ALS? Let's start there, because countless people have been taken down by this filthy disease, and credit to Chris and Kelsie Snow, they've tackled it head on. So let's move forward. And thanks again to Chris and Kelsie for joining us on the podcast. On our social media channels, there were a number of people suggesting that Patrick Reed should get the throat punch for the shenanigans that went on the weekend of the PGA event. I watched it. There were mistakes that were made, but for anybody who didn't see it, he moved his ball without allowing the officials to come over, because he challenged that it was an embedded golf ball. But the video after the fact showed that it in fact had bounced. Nobody had seen the video. So there's outrage over Patrick Reed doing this, but it's mostly because of the history and the reputation, right, of Patrick Reed.
Sure.
Because Rory McIlroy did this same thing and it was barely even mentioned. I mean, they showed it on CBS, and I think that was just a comparison. You've got this upstanding, well-liked Rory McIlroy who did the same thing, and then you've got Patrick Reed who should be vilified. So
yeah, Dregs, I love golf.
Yeah.
I play a lot. I didn't see, quite honestly, the McIlroy one. But here's the thing: you want to get a ruling on whether the ball's embedded. I got an idea. Mark it with a T and wait until the rules official gets there. What's the thing? What's the ball doing in your hand?
Yeah.
And if it's in your hand, why is it in your palm? Why isn't it just between your fingers? Which, when you're on the golf course and you got any ruling, that is how you pick the ball up, because you don't want to disturb the ground anywhere around. Does that mean when you go to pick it up, you just push it down flat with your palm to make an indentation? Come on, man. These guys are the best players in the world. They know the rules. Why does the same crap happen to the same guy all the time? Oh, I didn't mean to brush that sand away in the trap. You didn't, did you? Stop it. And the fact of the matter that bugs everybody too is he's so damn good.
He is good.
He's an amazing player.
He closed at the Farmers, man. The back nine, it seemed like he was almost playing by himself, because nobody. I like Tony Finau, because Tony Finau to me is just an interesting guy, and he can hit at a bazillion miles. But how about the stones on him on the tee on second shot on 18, where he's like, what is he, 3 shots back, maybe even 4 still at that point. He knows he's got to go for the green. He's got to make eagle, or he's got zero chance, and he needs Reed to do something dumb. And he misses the green by a few feet, dunks it in the water. But I'm sitting there going, I love that, because he's not worried about making his paycheck. He's trying to give himself a chance to win a golf tournament. And
now there's two guys. It's funny you say that. A couple of weeks ago, somebody asked, and I can't think of the player's name, do you think you can win every week? And he said, no, I don't think I can win every week. And they said, well, why do you keep coming out here? He goes, well, they pay pretty good for 20th. And then the next week, Brooks Koepka was asked about that. And he goes, no, I'm here to win. He goes, although I hear they pay well for 20th. Because he's just Brooks Koepka. Yeah. I'm going to switch over to my throat punch, Drakes. This past week, the Ferrero household got a gift. And the gift was a letter from the orthodontist that one of the boys needs braces. Mm-hmm. And the throat punch goes to the orthodontist because I think it is foolproof. It's a foolproof gig. You could go in there with the most perfect teeth and they'll say, oh, you've got a smidge of an overbite. You don't need the full orthodontic treatment, but this little one, which is $1,500, that would be great for you. Ours was not the $1,500. Ours was the 20 to 24 month full meal deal. I expect them to pick Riley up at school and take him to the orthodontist and drive him back. That's what I suspect should happen for the feet.
I don't know what it was like back in your day. I could have used some help. Probably needed the braces, but There's zero chance coming from a small town, farming background in Saskatchewan, that my old man or my mom are rolling out $2,000 or whatever it was, 30, 40 years ago. Zero chance. Your teeth are crooked? That's fine. Don't worry about it, Anyway, I'm going with the Patrick Reed throat punch. I'm fine with that. But I had a second one, and we'll be quick with this. And it's James Duthie, because every time we go to do a segment, Insider Trading,
right?
I close the office door. You can probably hear a bit of the echo in my office. And I know that, you make sure that things are locked down in your area, because we've got to record the podcast. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. Almost every Insider Trading, Duthie has to call, Jared, come and get the dogs. Like, we're all sitting there like we have nothing better to do. Okay, James, it's your day. We're just happy to be a part of it. Like, it happens every week. So,
okay, but then you have that at home.
Yeah.
And then you go to the studio sometimes and you got to work with Duthie. So now they've got you guys 6 feet apart. We don't have everybody on the desk. How about the mess around that man? It is staggering. Markers, pens, all his protein bar wrappers that are all over the place.
Multiple throat punches.
He's the best, but he's a mess.
He is a mess. All right, time for a weekly visit with Chris Abbott from coolbet.co. And clearly Super Bowl week. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl in just a moment, but the National Hockey League, Chris, has become an entertaining place. If you're watching the Oilers and the Senators on Sunday night, tough to bet the over on that one, considering the Oilers won that thing 8-5. But has the NHL become easier to predict, if you will, from your perspective at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, definitely from my perspective, I've laid bets every day of the season so far, and the first 10 days, I got hammered. Like, it did not go well, and just because the variance was so high, and we were seeing, the teams on the back-to-back didn't matter, the discrepancy between rosters. We were seeing those games get split. We were seeing a ton of goals. Then we weren't seeing a lot of goals. So the last, I'd say last half of last week and into the weekend became kind of easy to predict. And then, you talk about that Senators-Oilers game, you could see it coming from a mile away, right? Matt Murray's not been playing well. Ottawa's giving up a ton. You've got obviously what Edmonton's offense can do. Then you got a guy getting his first crack at it in Skinner. So yeah, it was a little easy to predict, but the overhitting within 16 minutes and 5 seconds of the first period, that was a special gift to end a Sunday night.
Yeah, nothing worse than having the under and there's 3 goals early and you're like, this is not going to go well. You can smell it.
Yeah, no, it was a big game for, point props as well. So one of the things with games like that, when you think there's going to be a lot of scoring, there is a lot of scoring, everything hits, like Leon Draisaitl over 2.5 points was a really good bet last night. And that would have paid you like 5-1 for sure, right? Because how many games the guys get 3 points or more. So yeah, it was even like I took a Josh Norris to get a point at plus 105. We just got lucky that all those things hit. And it was like a couple of weeks ago in the NFL in that Cleveland-Kansas City game where there was just points back and forth the whole time. So everybody got in on the action last night.
Okay, so Super Bowl's coming up. What's your favorite goofy prop that shows up on Super Bowl day? There's
some good ones. I love the over-under on the anthem. Like, I think that's the best. That's a good way to get in, get up or down before the game even starts, right? So over under on the anthem, people will go find out who's singing it. They'll research on YouTube to see if they've sang it anywhere else before. They'll try and listen to and get news from the rehearsal and see how long the rehearsal went. Yeah. So that's kind of fun, but you can get everything. Like I've seen, I remember the traditional Super Bowl Sunday where, Montreal plays at home in the afternoon in the NHL. So you'd see what will be more like Carey Price's total number of saves or points by the home team, so things like that. You can see all kinds of interesting props. People love it. It's a lot of fun. It's become almost as big as the game now.
I had a buddy of mine, this is a Super Bowl party years ago. I don't even remember what Super Bowl it was. But this guy's throwing 20s and 50s around, betting on everything, absolutely everything. including the coin toss, right? Like, is that a real thing, or is that just for schmoes like Vape Guy, who O-Dog has nicknamed this dude? He's a buddy of mine, Andrew Porter. Bet $20 on the coin toss. Is that a real thing?
Well, of course it's a real thing. People love the action, and just like the anthem, it's a chance to, get up or down, maybe get a little bit extra money in your account before the game even starts. So, and then sportsbooks get a profit on it because people are going to bet both sides. So it's a win-win for everybody. It's a bit of fun. Is it a smart thing to bet on? No, absolutely not. It's literally a coin flip. But hey, you could have worse odds on something.
Now, what's the lines look like early, and what trend do you see? I mean, of course, there's the thought of Brady doing something incredible, and the reality that Mahomes is against a really good defense, but he seems to do something great almost every week.
Yeah, we're actually seeing some really interesting betting action, right? And actually, Darren and I were talking about this before you jumped on, before we did this call, was that the public, like everybody, the recreational bettors are coming in on Kansas City at -3 at about a 5-to-1 ratio. But the line has actually moved the other way because it was Kansas City 3.5, and it's come back to 3 points because a lot of the professionals, quote unquote, are the guys who are splashing the big money around. While there's fewer of them, more of them are on Tampa Bay. So from a sportsbook perspective, that's exactly what you hope for, is to get, a bunch of action on one side and then get it countered on the other side. So, you're in a winning position. So we're seeing, everybody, Joe Public is on Kansas City, whereas the guys who are sitting home with multiple computer screens and spreadsheets and algorithms, more of those guys are on Tampa Bay, which is really interesting. Everybody's in agreement on the over, though. It opened at about 54. It's at 56 now for the total.
And not going to slow down before.
No. What's a bigger bet?
What do you mean? What's a bigger bet?
Well,
what's more popular?
No. I mean, if I place $100 bet on Tampa Bay to win, to upset Kansas City, I mean, are guys coming in at 10,000? Like, I mean, when we're talking about the bigger money, what are we talking about here?
What are we talking about? Yeah, you're talking about like the person who puts their 20, 30, 40, 50 one time a year on the Super Bowl as the public guy, and people coming in, $500 or more on the other side. I mean, not many people lay, 500 plus on a single sporting event. Like, that's rare, but that's where you get the heavier hitters come in. I mean, sure, there would be some looking to place $10,000 bets. There's also public people looking to place $10,000 bets, but on average, what you would see would be, one of us putting down our $25, or the guy who looks at it as a real money making opportunity, treat it as an investment. Yeah, you're looking at 10 to 20 times that for their bet. Yeah.
Are you feeling lucky, Ray? Maybe the Ray and Dregs podcast could put a little dough down here.
We should.
Do you guys have any thoughts?
Okay, so what about? Can I parlay?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll have teaser options, so you could.
Could I make this Kansas City +3 over 52?
Yes. Yeah, over 50 actually.
Over,
right?
Well, that's probably what I would do.
6 points each way. Kansas City +3 over 50. Yeah.
Let's do it.
You got to like the bet.
People will always tell you not to cross 0 when you're doing the teasers. So people would suggest, Ray, if you were doing that, make it Tampa Bay +9 over 50, which probably I like as well. But if you're super confident that Kansas City is going to win, yes, that's certainly one way to do it. But
I'm super confident. I'm on my couch. Of course, I'm super confident. Right?
The internet gambling community would chastise you for suggesting the crossing the 0 move. But hey, I'm with you. Let's do it.
Okay, I've never heard that. I like it.
Yeah.
It is. That's the Ray and Dregs. Well, Dregs and I are going to discuss this first because last year's Dregs' focus on the Super Bowl was different. So I got to make sure that he's more, he's locked in here. I got to make sure.
Something else I really like to bet in this game is an interception for each quarterback. I haven't seen the actual number, the price on it yet. Both of these defenses were averaging an interception a game or better. And the last time they played, Kansas City picked off Brady twice.
I'm going to debate that. Only from Mahomes went about 500 passes without an interception. Brady will throw an interception in the first quarter.
All right. So you're going to bet on Brady then. Okay. You don't have to bet on both of them. You can bet on just Brady to throw a pick. And I think that's not a bad play either.
Okay. Well, we're going to be in
Look at Dregs. No, let's just bet on it all.
No, we're going to sprinkle the infield here a little bit. We'll go through our good friend. We'll go through our good friend, Chris Abbott. So we'll talk offline. Well, we're not going to spend a ton of money. We're going to spend a little bit. Maybe we can make 3 or 4 bets. How do you know? It'll give us lots of fodder to talk about what happened in the Super Bowl in the next episode.
Well, that's absolutely what's happening. Chris will be in touch.
All right, and we'll put him out in the Twitter sphere for everybody to see.
Oh, you betcha!
No,
Absolutely. Wow. What could go wrong, Chris? What could go wrong?
Nothing. Free money. Yeah.
All right, Chris. Well, we appreciate you taking the time on a weekly basis. We can continue this week by week. There's always a lot. We started this segment talking about the National Hockey League. So yeah, okay, we'll get to the Super Bowl this weekend, and then we'll take an interesting deep dive look at the National Hockey League post Super Bowl. How's that?
Absolutely, my pleasure. And there's always something around the corner. Baseball, MLS, you name it. Oh, huge week in the Premier League this week, but we don't have time. So we'll talk about it another time.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris.
Cheers, boys.
All right, let's move on to Ask Ray and Darren Anything. We bring our questions from a variety of different spaces, including rayandregs.com. We talked about Patrick Reed and throat punch. There were a bunch of questions about our thoughts on that. But we're going to go to Montreal. And this one is directed strictly to you, my friend. Mike in Montreal says, hey, boys, I love the pod. I listen to it while I'm driving. He goes, I have a question for Ray on calling games off tube. And then for those who don't know, that's off television. It's off a monitor with the feed coming back into wherever you happen to be. Do you have multiple angles, Ray, and different views to call the game off the tube? Or are you basically watching it like we would be watching it at home?
For the most part, I'm watching it like you're watching it at home. However, there's one camera. Okay, so it gets a little complicated, so I hope this makes sense. If we're doing the game and Sportsnet is doing the game, and the game is in a Sportsnet area. So, for example, Toronto is playing in Calgary, and I'm doing the game for the Toronto region. They're doing the game for the Calgary region. Because it's in Calgary, they control the camera. They control the cameras. So I don't have any secondary views. I have whatever Sportsnet's putting on the camera. That's what I got. When Vancouver plays in Toronto this Thursday, I think it's Thursday. Yeah, Thursday.
Yeah.
We will control the cameras because it's in a TSN region. The Sportsnet broadcasters will have to take what we're showing,
right,
and make it fit on their show. So to answer the multiple cameras really quickly, there's a camera that sits in the booth. It's called the booth camera. In football, they call it the all 24. They have a camera that shows all 24 guys on the field all the time. I will have access to that. So if the goalie leaves the net on a pulled goalie or a delayed penalty, I can see that. If somebody trips somebody behind the play, I can see that. But that's only if I'm looking at that camera. Most of the time, I'm looking at what you're looking at. It's nowhere near as good not being in the building as doing it off a tube. But that's the world we're in. We're doing the best we can with it.
All right. Thanks, Mike in Montreal. Now let's go to Sam. We'll take one more question here. Without a miracle, Sam is saying, a sudden blooming of prospects, so we're reaping an unbelievable reward by trading Leon Draisaitl. The Oilers are looking at years of mediocre results. Connor McDavid is stupendous, but the supporting cast isn't good enough. It's a team game. Draisaitl, McDavid can't do it without major help. This is all according to Sam. What should the Oilers front office do? Or maybe you don't agree with Sam's assessment, Ray.
No, Sam's right. The two guys clearly are incredible players, Draisaitl and McDavid. Unbelievable players. However, they can't do it anywhere near enough by themselves. The Oilers have between $25 and $30 million of salaries that are coming off the books this year. So if you're looking for the Oilers to improve, it's going to be in the summer. It can't be now because where are you going to make a trade? Where are you going to get another player? Where are you going to fit the cap space in? And so I'd say the way to to this is, the way to look at it is, when a general manager gets fired, there's a little bit of a mess behind him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have got fired. Right. Things would be going along fine and he'd continue on. When Peter Chiarelli was fired, there was a mess. Well, that's Ken Holland's mess now. But you can't fix it overnight. Those contracts have to run off so you can change the mix. So if your Oilers, Sam, don't look better in September, that's going to be on Ken Holland and his staff. But right now, they're trying to get 7 goals from this guy and 5 goals from that guy, and good enough defensive play from that guy. Gee, I hope Koskinen's good enough and Mike Smith comes back and we can get in the playoffs. That's kind of where you're at right now.
All right. We're going to wrap up episode 8, and we do it with a huge shout out every week to our partners who make the podcast possible. And that's coolbet.co, the free-to-play sports and casino games website, Ligaro.com Jewelers. Valentine's Day quickly approaching. Ligaro.com is where you want to go to get something that he or she are going to love. And remember to use code RAY10 for that 10% discount. All right, Ray, we're going to gear up for episode 9. In the meantime, what does your week look like?
A couple of Jets games from, I was going to say from studio, but actually a couple of Jets games from kind of right over here.
Right
where
here.
My chair is. Right there. So Jets in Calgary, Monday and Tuesday should be really good stuff. Those are going to be good games. Thursday, I have Vancouver at Toronto, where I'll be calling the game with Gord, and orthodontist appointment. We got to get the ball rolling there, and and then whatever radio and other nonsense pops up in the week.
Is it warm?
How about you?
Yeah, more of the same. Yeah, lots of radio, a few games, insider trading Tuesday, Thursday. I'm starting now. When you get post-Christmas, get through January. February is always that. February, March, in fact, they're kind of your hump months, right? At least they are in Eastern Canada and Toronto. Because
February here.
You can see spring isn't that far away, but it's far enough away that it's still painful. But I start to get the golf itch. And so my buddies from, I guess it's Titleist, FootJoy, sent a couple of pairs of golf shoes. Ooh. So
really?
Yes.
You got a podcast partner?
Yeah, I know. It was a sneak attack. It wasn't, but trust me, you'll be fine.
And I like those yellow Titleists.
I know you do,
because I can't see, so I like the yellow ones.
So now that they've arrived, I've got the itch. I want to get golfing a little.
Are you wearing the golf shoes around the house?
No. I don't wear much. I wear. Hold on. Let's see.
That going there.
Yeah, that's what.
Oh, I kind of like that. You know what I wear?
It's really good support.
I wear these, Dregs.
Oh, where'd you get those?
This one from the Marriott, and I called Gord, because of course, Gord's in a different place in the hotel, and I'm like, hey, Gordo, you don't use those slippers, do you? And he's like, no. And I'm like, can I have them? And he goes, okay, I'll put them outside the door. And I go, because we're on the same floor. I go, well, what room are you in? And he goes, I'm in the room with the slippers outside the door. So I ran down there and scooped up another pair. So I'm set for the next time, for the next couple of months.
So just to revisit stories, because that's what we do on this podcast.
Yeah.
So you weren't actually naked when you pushed the stationary bike out into the hallway. You were wearing the JW Marriott slippers.
No, I didn't even have the slippers on, because I was going right into the hallway, or I was going right into the shower. Right? God. That was the plan. It was a well-conceived plan, poorly executed.
That sounds like it. All right. Thanks to everybody for listening, for rating, for sharing, and following the podcast wherever you listen, and for subscribing to us on the YouTube channel as well. Ray, you have a great week, and we look forward to next week in episode 9.
Yeah, you too, Drakes. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Have a great week. Be safe, everybody.